Hello everyone, welcome to yet another day in this Clown Decade, the decade where things are only going to get worse before they get better. And today it is a subject that should be, I should say, very sensitive, but unfortunately when it comes to the new elite types and just the whole general vibe of metropolitan areas, in this specific case London, it's a subject that, frankly, much like abortion, we've ended up celebrating this subject rather than treating it as something sacred and something, frankly, we should probably fear. I'm of course talking about euthanasia, and despite my attempts to try and get over the minute mark before mentioning that, I will just take the hit on monetisation, because this is a serious issue, and one that I'm sure everyone in some way can relate to. I am sure pretty much everyone in my audience, everyone in the world, knows someone who is suffering and who, frankly, we can see the arguments to promote euthanasia. However, we have been dealt a whole slap of reality yesterday alone when it comes to the conversation around the assisted dying bill, which is currently being read at Parliament, going through the process to become law to allow euthanasia to be legal within the UK. And so during this time, Transport for London had, well, this was the one that went viral, a few adverts promoting assisted dying. My dying wish is my family won't see me suffer and I won't have to. Let us choose. Look how happy we are. I get to choose when I die. An online influencer, Fleur Elizabeth, was just posting a video of literally wall-to-wall adverts like this, of people effectively celebrating the fact that they are going to die. I have a dying wish. It is effectively to allow someone else to kill me. And it's pulling at the emotional heartstrings you'd expect it to. I want to play this one out with my family. I don't want to suffer. I don't want other people to see me suffer. I want to have a choice. And down another tunnel with wall-to-wall ads, the Samaritans started putting up posters effectively saying, look, if you feel suicidal, please call us. Because they realise, as everyone would realise, that putting up these posters saying, you have a choice, kill yourself, is going to make people become a bit more suicidal. So they've had to kind of panic put up these paper posters saying, look, this isn't the right thing to do, by the way. I know Transport for London have allowed this, but this isn't the right thing to do. Don't throw yourself onto the tracks, please. And I think the most absurd thing about this, which truly is the most Clown Decade thing I can ever think of, because the London Underground and Transport for London is renowned, absolutely renowned, for banning advertisements. The first one, ironically, being one about what was claimed to be fat shaming, with the Are You Beach Body Ready advertisement advertising some weight loss protein, which ironically enough is actually promoting a healthy lifestyle, and Transport for London banned it, so I suppose I shouldn't be too surprised that they're promoting suicide. However, it starts becoming absurd when they start banning basic cheese adverts and fast food adverts because they are deemed too unhealthy. In other words, this stuff that is bad for your health, we're not going to allow it to be advertised because you might end up wanting a bit of cheese, and that can, affect your cholesterol or something. I don't know the science behind cheese. I know it's got calcium in, so I know it's good for your teeth. However, you get the point. Transport for London says, right, you advertise cheese and Domino's, that's too unhealthy, you might get fat from that. However, we're also going to ban adverts that ask you, are you healthy enough, promoting weight loss. Oh, and also, we may as well just allow adverts that say, you know what, if you're suffering a bit, you should kill yourself. And again, I am fully expecting to have no monetisation for this video whatsoever. But you've got to realise that one of the... Suicide is so common when it comes to locomotion, whether that be the London Underground or whether that be overground trains or trains on the National Rail. It is a particularly popular way to actually commit suicide because it's near instantaneous and therefore quite painless. It's also quite quick as well. You just, I don't want to go into detail on it. It's very quick. It's so renowned, in fact, that there are entire policies for being train drivers for if you end up having to suffer watching someone go through with that. I believe if it happens 2 or 3 times, I think it's twice, you literally cannot be a train driver again because it causes too much PTSD and you get a state pension for the rest of your life. You also need to literally be trained into what to do if there is a person under the carriage, I believe they call it, because it's so common. So where have they decided is a good place to put wall-to-wall adverts about killing yourself? On the London Underground. A locomotive transport. Yeah, clearly people at Transport for London and the advertisement watchdog didn't think this through. Anyway, on to the assisted dying bill itself now. David Steele decided to write an article for The Times where he titled it as "The Architect of the Abortion Act, I think we should welcome the assisted dying bill." I just don't understand why these people are so obsessed with killing other people. When did the choice to kill other people become the pinnacle of Western civilization? As an MP, David Steele helped bring in major societal change in 1967. Backbenchers have the power to bring about groundbreaking laws, he argues. Yes, that doesn't mean you should. I understand that Parliament is sovereign and that, because of that, Parliament can literally bring in any law it likes, but perhaps after the Abortion Act you should have probably thought, wow, the incentives here are really skewed. Because what the Abortion Act actually ended up doing is that obviously it was supposed to be safe, legal and rare. It was supposed to be, if you're having a back alley abortion, we have a safe alternative for you. Instead, as I know from personal experience, it is literally just late stage contraception. That is all it really has turned into for most people. I can't remember the statistics off the top of my head, but a majority of people who get abortions basically don't say why they're getting it, because effectively it is a contraception. And so when it comes to assisted suicide in the NHS, well, the NHS is just terrible. I mean, honestly, I had to endure A&E for 8 hours recently, and even then it was another 11-hour wait for a doctor. If anything's going to promote euthanasia, it's A&E. And also there was this whole thing, even before COVID this was a thing, but especially post-COVID, people don't want to be a burden on the NHS because they know that it racks up a absolutely huge bill, and they'd rather not be a burden on the taxpayer. Well, that's going to encourage people to want to go through with assisted dying as well. Like, already there are perverse incentives, and already Samaritans have had to come out and say, whoa, this isn't so much of a slippery slope, but we've just fallen off a cliff with how quickly we are literally advertising, hey, your life isn't going great, you're suffering a bit, hey, why don't you try this new option that means that you're not a burden to anyone ever again and it ends your suffering, which, again, much like abortion, we used to be much more liberal when it comes to that, but people have seen the result of it, and effectively a lot of people have come to realise, wow, this is actually quite evil. And I think the same thing's going to happen here, but I imagine David Steele has completely blanked himself from all the actual consequences of allowing abortion to come in. Abortion is literally the #1 killer in Europe and the UK. It's the #1 killer, but we don't count fetuses as human beings, so they're not taken into account for death statistics. You bring in MAID in Canada, all of a sudden that's the biggest killer, because we actually count old people who are dying as people. There are stories of Belgium of people who suffer from fatigue killing themselves at 23 because they just don't see any other option, when, frankly, okay, you can only stay awake for 4 hours a day. That's still better than a few other people, and you can still do useful things with it. I understand chronic fatigue is an issue, but my god, you're 23. There are plenty of ways that you can recover in the next 60 years of your life. It's horrible. And it's horrible that David Steele has decided, you know what, I brought in the Abortion Act, that was a great success. Assisted dying can't go wrong. I just find it horrible. Anyway, on to less serious politicians who nevertheless are in our government. Here is Jess Phillips doing her best to put forward why she is voting for the assisted dying bill.
I can't express enough how thoughtful and kind and calm my constituency conversations have been on all sides. I have taken representations from people who very much are for this and very much against it, and there hasn't been a crossword among. And I have to say the debate has carried out with dignity and kindness.
I mean, that's all great, Jess, but I do find it absolutely hilarious that she is called the safeguarding minister, and apparently the safeguarding minister's pro killing people. I mean, she's pro-abortion, I'm pretty sure up until birth, so I shouldn't be too shocked that she is also pro-euthanasia.
My own family is currently affected by these sorts of decisions, and so you take all of that in the round.
Yeah, look, every family has at some point had to think about decisions like this, and honestly, having a closed door on this issue, saying no, that is not an option, I think that just makes it easier for basically everyone. I mean, even my dad keeps saying if he ever gets dementia, he does just want to go out with, dignity, as they say, and things like that. And I basically keep telling him, no, I'm not doing that. That is way too uncomfortable for me. And frankly, even if you do start suffering with dementia, your life still has value. And frankly, you never know. By the time you end up at 80 and starting to get dementia, they'll probably have a cure for it. You see the white pilling news every so often that, oh, there's a new breakthrough when it comes to Alzheimer's and dementia. You know, it is possible that we're not far off curing it. So I'd get the idea out your head early anyway. I have never, ever, even in my lapsed Christian days, thought that euthanasia is a good idea. It's one of those ones I have absolutely no sympathy for. Not no sympathy for, as I say, I can understand the whole dying with dignity argument and not wanting to suffer, but it doesn't take long to understand how all of a sudden opening the door to letting other people, you know, kill you for suicidal intentions is almost encouraging suicide, unfortunately.
Look, I fundamentally believe in a right to choose. I don't think that is going to be a surprise to anybody knowing my track record, but I don't take it lightly what bills particularly say, and I listen to what people are telling me and take a large range of views.
Throughout my experience in politics, there is usually only one reason that a politician would go through so much setup to say, listen, I've listened to as many people as I can, I've been in all these conversations, I've even got a personal stake in it, and it's probably because they haven't prepared for anything at all in answer to this, and they're about to say the most stupid thing in the world.
If this goes through, Jess, 3/4 of us in a poll yesterday by the Sunday Times said they didn't think the NHS is actually in a fit enough state to provide assisted dying. Are you confident it is?
I don't look. I think that if you look at all the reports, like the report by Lord Darcy recently, the NHS is not in a fit enough state, and that is why the government is investing £26 billion in bringing it back up to where it should be.
Okay, so she's just conceded that, yeah, the NHS is in a state, and it probably wouldn't be in a good state to have assisted dying. Also, yes, I'm sure that spending another $28 billion, throwing more money at the NHS to fund it for another 2 weeks is absolutely what's going to save the NHS this time. Anyway, Jess, answer the question. What is going to happen with the assisted dying bill? Are you in favour of it or not, despite just admitting that the NHS probably can't provide it very well?
You'd vote for assisted dying in spite of that.
But you cannot stop progress happening, whether that's on abortion law, on cancer care. You cannot, new innovations will come in all sorts of ways about a variety of clinical practices.
You cannot stop progress. What a fantastically Whig version of history. No, you absolutely can stop progress. We have seen many times in history where progress has managed to be stopped. I think Jess Phillips would argue that Germany between 1935 and 1945 generally did not progress very well, despite the fact that they had more liberal abortion laws than most of the rest of the world at that time. I mean, seriously, if progress does just mean it's easier to kill unborn babies and kill elderly people who are suffering, then I don't want to be part of that progress. I don't consider that progress, and, well, therefore it's just completely undermined your own point. But it's pretty amazing, though, how part of her examples of you can't stop progress are that, oh, look, we're curing people more, therefore we need to kill them. What? She also just admitted that the NHS is in a bad state, probably not good enough to actually offer this assisted dying, and her whole reasoning behind voting for it now is just, oh, well, you can't stop progress, like, assisted dying's got to come in at some point, because obviously it's progressive, so I may as well just vote for it now. And you got to bear in mind that the Tories wouldn't be that much better on it. They'd probably pump the brakes a little. They probably wouldn't bring in assisted dying this early, but in a decade or so they'd probably be talking about how it's the best thing they ever brought in, like gay marriage. I mean, to be fair on all this, Parliament is very much split on this. Last poll I saw, it was very much 50-50. It's literally a coin flip if it goes through or not. And don't worry, we'll get into some of the better people who are actually thinking about this and realising, wow, this is a really bad way to go. But Jess Phillips here, no, she's got a complete void for her head. When she talks, she acts on literally nothing but instinct, and as we can see, her instincts are just, well, you can't stop progress, so may as well kill the elderly.
And because the NHS has been woefully neglected for the last decade, we shouldn't be trying to progress as a country. I don't recognise that argument, if I'm honest.
The NHS isn't in a fit state. It's probably not going to be good enough to offer decent... It doesn't offer decent end-of-life care anyway, but it won't offer decent euthanasia support anyway. Well, that's not a reason not to kill the elderly. I'm being completely unironic here when Jess Phillips is literally being like Sam Hyde.
Guys, what's the one problem right now that's not going to be around in 2070? the elderly and the disabled. Because we're just gonna kill them.
I mean, that is literally just Philip's argument right now. There was nothing else to that. Oh, I've listened to a load of people, but, you know, the NHS isn't great. Oh, we're going to have an issue with the elderly and the sick. Doesn't matter, we're just going to kill them. Anyway, here's a little snippet of an interview with Gláeddyv, who is the person who drafted the initial assisted dying bill, on the newsagents being asked about some of the details about assisted dying. And once again, it's just very Sam Hyde.
Are you concerned that in a survey of Canadians who ended their lives under their system, which I accept is a different system, but nonetheless?
I actually believe it's quite similar. My girlfriend has made friends with some Canadians, and from the sounds of it, they are incentivised to do similar things that we are here just to get seen. I heard an anecdote of two parents had a sick child and they went to A&E and were basically told, similar to us, it's going to be like a 12-hour wait. And effectively they were suggested by someone else, just go stand outside, call an ambulance, and then you'll basically skip to the front of the queue because it'll be an emergency. Canadian healthcare, I mean, there's a reason that it's just an emphasis for euthanasia at this point, because it might be different in the details, but overall they have largely the same issues as us, because I believe it's mostly socialised.
Although the vast majority did say that they wanted to die because they'd lost their ability to engage in meaningful life activities, but more than 1/3 did say their desire to do so was in part informed by a feeling that they were a perceived burden on family, friends or caregivers. I mean, that's a fact.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Canada clearly a much broader set of criteria, nothing like we've been proposing at the moment.
The impulse was the same.
But yeah, and I think that is the conversation that would take place with the doctors. So.
Yeah, but again, as I keep saying, we're at a point where that conversation doesn't need to happen because we just don't accept it as legitimate, which I don't think we should. As soon as you start showing it as legitimate, all of a sudden there's wall-to-wall adverts effectively saying go die in the London Underground. Like this, you got to realise this basically happened overnight. Euthanasia wasn't really a conversation we had in British politics, and then all of a sudden this assisted dying bill comes out, Parliament's completely split, but at the same time, clearly metropolitan areas think, oh, it's a completely good idea. Tell you what, be pro-suicide in our London Underground.
If someone is sitting there saying, I might as well just go on being a burden to everyone, you know, the doctor will clearly pick up on that and will clearly say, hang on a minute, this is about you and it's about your choice.
But if they still say that I want to do that anyway, would, under your system, it still happen?
Well, there is an argument that having personal choice and autonomy is part of the whole process. However, they would have to be assessed to having the capacity and making sure that no one else has coerced them into doing that.
Yeah, I'm not being funny, but constant headlines of the NHS is in crisis, like that is effectively being coerced into it. Oh, I don't want to cost the NHS thousands of pounds a year, therefore I'll cost them hundreds immediately, you know, have my kids take my inheritance and pay for my funeral. Like, how is that not coercion? This is the problem with the assisted dying bill and euthanasia in general. It's close to actually impossible to not blur the lines between coercion and a fully autonomous choice. I mean, you know, years ago I might have said, oh, you know, I can understand the argument, you know, people are sovereign, it's up to the individual for their choice, but ultimately I've come round to the idea of, no, we're social creatures. It's effectively impossible to actually be a legitimate hermit without going somewhat mad. You are part of a wider body of people, whether that be the human race or your country or your family, whatever. And ultimately, their choice does kind of come into it too, in terms of what is their preference. And, you know, it's quite easy to say, yeah, you are quite a burden, it might be easier without you. And it's like, is that coercion or not? It's certainly going to, well, it's clearly informed people in Canada that, okay, I'd rather die then. And as I say, I think that is absolutely despicable and horrible. And at that point, yeah, as a society, we should, you know, we restrict choices every day. When it comes to deciding whether you should live or die, for years we have said, obviously you should live. Yet for some reason now, because it's to do with the NHS, because it's to do with healthcare, all of a sudden it's okay to effectively say people, you know what, we are not anti-suicide anymore. In fact, we are pro-it, according to the London Underground.
So I appreciate that is a very delicate issue. I mean, there are people who've said to me, and I think my mum would probably say this to me, but surely being concerned about being a burden is a legitimate reason as well, in terms of, I know I wouldn't want to be a burden to people, I can say that to you now in the clear light of day, but that's very different to people saying, I'm doing this because I feel like I'm being a burden.
Well, when it comes to a major decision like this, it is actually multifaceted, and so no, there is no particular difference between saying, oh, I don't like being a burden to people, and then deciding that you want to go through with assisted dying. I think the worst part about all this is just how hand-wavy the whole issue is to Kim Leadbeater here, Leadbeater, I don't know which it is. And it was very much when it came to Jess Phillips as well. It's the same attitude of just, well, this is progress, other countries are doing it, you know, forget their problems, you know, it's actually more complicated than that. And really, the sensible answer to that is just, well, if it's so complicated, perhaps we shouldn't touch it quite yet. And maybe we shouldn't touch it at all. But that never seems to be a legitimate answer. It's always got to be, what flavour of assisted suicide would you like as a country, rather than how about we don't have any?
But you can imagine a world in which that would become the primary, that their lives are being shortened because of that. And I suppose that's exactly what the critics of your bill are worried about.
Well, but we're saying these are people who are already dying, so they've not got very long left to live. You are taking a holistic approach. You'd be speaking to them about their level of pain. You'd be speaking to them about the other options that are available to them in terms of palliative care and medical help and assistance. You'd be speaking to them, if you need to speak to a psychiatrist, you speak to a psychiatrist.
The clip ends there, but you get the idea. The most important thing there is the first point you made. Oh, these people are dying anyway. Okay, that is not then a reason to come along and effectively murder them, despite the fact they may want it or not. Hospice care is trying to make their lives as comfortable as possible while nature takes its course. And even then, you never know. There might be experimental things that come out, clinical trials for trying to ease their pain or even help them to recover from whatever may ail them. There's plenty of reasons to not do it. Plus, losing someone is very, very painful. And I don't have much respect for people that are effectively saying, oh, it would just be better if they died. Now, I can appreciate that from my point of view, I am not the one who is going daily to help look after my elderly and sick relatives. I can understand that. My parents, especially my mother, though, was the type of person who would go daily for her mother, who was not in the best health situation. There are other carers who looked after her as well, but she would go out of her way for it. And when it comes down to it, I reckon they'd be part of the, assisted dying makes sense side as well. But that seems to be a very kind of boomer attitude of the thing that matters more than anything is personal choice, which I suppose eventually I've grown out of in a way. Because yes, personal choice, personal sovereignty and agency are very, very important and definitely high on the priority list, but at the end of the day, there's a reason that we stop people making some choices, and in rare cases I would say, yes, you should obviously not have a choice there. We don't, well, apart from abortion, we don't give people the option to murder. We don't give people the option to mutilate their own or somebody else's body in an awful lot of circumstances. Again, we've started making exceptions to that, and all of a sudden it's exploded as quite a big problem. It's one of these things of, why do we have these traditions? Well, they solved the problem we don't really remember. And it appears that the early 21st century is learning all of the, well, late 20th century as well, is learning why we had all these rules again. Which is why I'm kind of white-pilled for, a few decades in the future. We have a whole cohort of people who are living through a world where basically they never knew what normalcy was. It's a very weird period of time where apparently all you need to say to vote on allowing people to kill themselves is, well, you can't stop progress. And that's going to make a lot of people think, well, maybe progress isn't all it's cracked up to be then. But luckily, I say this is a boomer attitude, but the two longest serving MPs, who are both very much boomers, are opposed to assisted dying, which is very, very good to see. So the UK's longest serving male and female MPs have united to oppose the assisted dying bill, which is due to debate in Parliament next week. In a joint article for The Guardian, Labour's Diane Abbott and Conservative Sir Edward Lee have said their politics could not be more different. However, they say they share concerns that the proposed legislation would put vulnerable minorities at risk. Okay, I don't know what they mean by that necessarily, but if that means old people with disabilities or who are coming to the end of life, yeah, fine. Well, if we count them as minorities, whatever. But you get the point here. This really has split Parliament. As I say, it's pretty much a coin toss whether this goes through or not. And I would hope that there are enough people voicing their concerns that they decide not to go through with this, because, you know, they do it in Belgium, they do it in Canada, they do it in Switzerland. It's created all sorts of problems. I think Switzerland have suffered the least problems, but I don't know the details of how they go through with their assisted dying. However, everyone has heard horror stories from Canada and Belgium, and I don't want to be a country of horror stories anymore. So, you know, this is probably going to be the first time I've ever said this in my life, but thank you, Diane Abbott. And with that, I think that's everything I've got for you for today. So please do subscribe. I'm nearly at 10k. I am literally 20 people off. So if we can get to 10,000 subscribers, hell, I was hoping by the new year. If we can do that by the end of the week, that's even better, you know? It'll be an emergency stream at the weekend for that. But obviously, if you're already subscribed, thank you very much. Do become a member, send super chats to super thanks. Hell, if I get one £5 super thanks for this video, that makes up for the fact it's probably going to be demonetized. Obviously, though, it's completely up to you. Shilling time over on the Worcester Club tonight. We will be doing a Tosh Talks on how to win a Trump-style election in the UK. Starting at 8:30 tonight. Do subscribe to the Worcester Club, links down in the description, and also join the Discord. I am fairly active in there, along with plenty of other people who are like-minded, so if you enjoy my videos and you use Discord, it might be worth you going there as well. Laughing at the Guardian returns in 2 weeks, and videos out as and when I can make them, which is pretty much daily at this point. Right, with that is all shilling done. That is everything I had for you for today. So once again, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.